Ladies and gentlemen, right now on the telephone line with me is local entertainer, songwriter, recording artist, and radio host, Mr. Jim Brickman. Jim, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Jim, for those that don't know, Jim Brickman's resume is a mile long. And Jim, I have to say that I DJ a lot of weddings and I play a lot of your music there. You're beloved by many, many people, just so you know that.
Oh, thank you for doing that.
Well, with a talent like yours, Jim, it has to be heard. So that's first of all and foremost. Tell me about your radio show and what kind of stuff you do, and just give me a little background on that.
Well, actually, I've been doing the show for almost 20 years now, and it's a weekend show, about 4 hours every weekend, and it plays throughout the country, different times, syndicated. And it is a lifestyle, music, a little bit of everything, celebrity interviews, health and wellness, pets and family and relationships and cooking and pretty much a little bit of everything that you do on the weekends, and really a lot of fun. I mean, it's very lighthearted, and it has a weekend vibe to it. But I love doing it because I learn something all the time. Everybody that I talk to and everybody that I interview, I learn something more, and so to me that's a really wonderful thing.
We both do interviews. What is the most important element about interviewing that you've learned since doing this radio program?
Well, you have to listen. You have to listen to what people say, because if you're too busy thinking about what your next question is going to be, or if you're too busy thinking about yourself instead of the guest, then you really don't get the best out of them.
Did you ever do an interview with somebody that you were over-prepared for?
No.
Okay.
I mean, you like to do background on somebody, but, from doing so many interviews myself, I think it helps me to interview other people, because I know, for the most part, how often I get asked the same questions, and I know that if other people are interviewed quite often, that's the same thing. You have to be relatable, something that is common, that is something that the audience feels like they can benefit from. So I try to put myself in the position of the audience. If I was listening, what would I want to know?
There are a lot of people that are musicians out there right now, and they're wondering, they feel they have talent. When did you know that this was something that was going to make a good living for you and you were going to make it?
Well, I don't think that in music or any real art form that comes naturally, that it's a decision that gets made. It's something that just is. It's not something that you think, should I should I go to medical school or should I be a musician? It's not an either or proposition. It at least for me, it was just what it was, and I didn't care what form it took. So it really wouldn't have mattered to me if I ended up being a songwriter or a producer or worked at a radio station, or obviously I wanted to be successful at whatever I did, but I didn't have to be a performer in order to feel happy being a musician.
Being on stage, does that still give you the same joy it did when you first began?
Yes, it's my favorite thing to do. And it's not everybody will say that. There are a lot of my friends who feel that the stage part of the whole thing is the hardest. I think I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's definitely the most joyful.
It brings out an element of extemporaneous behavior. You're able to kind of have an idea what set you're going to play, but then you look at the audience and get a vibe from the audience, and you're able to kind of play off that a little bit. I think that's, to me, that's what I would take away from it.
Yes, because it is in that moment. It's something that is only existing in that particular night or that particular town, that particular weather, and to me that's really exciting that's a unique experience for that one time.
And this coming Friday at Kane Park, you will be performing. Are tickets still available?
I presume so. I haven't tried to get tickets, so I don't know.
Okay. I always like to ask the guest that just to make sure. But it should be a great show. What was your first performance that you remember?
Well, you mean as a musician live performance?
Yes, as a professional.
As a grown-up?
Yeah, as a professional musician.
Yeah, I mean, well, the first time that I did a concert that was, let's say, at the very beginning of my recording career, it was in Cleveland. It was at the Odeon in the Flats, which was a very peculiar choice for a venue, but it was I think the best choice because it's a club, and so it didn't have a lot of expectation associated with it.
What was the first song that you ever remember writing? And is that the song you're most proud of? I was very curious about that.
No, because my first songwriting was as a teenager, and although it had, musical elements that were pretty well crafted, I would say the lyrics in this particular case really didn't make any sense. They were
okay.
They were a compilation of things that I had heard, phrases that I had heard, and you don't really have a sense of what you're doing or a maturity about it in order to write something like that. And in my case, what I'm known for, depending on how you know me, like when you say about weddings, most of the people that don't know my music and hear it at weddings are more familiar with the vocal songs than the solo piano music. Very
true. Very, very true. And I've always noticed, you're very talented in all aspects of music, and a lot of people don't realize that, you do a lot with, you're not just a pianist, you're a composer, you're a writer, you do all these things, and that takes an extraordinary individual to be able to conceive the big picture, and some people can only do portions of that element. So, you're very blessed in that respect. And who is the one that gave you the most inspiration in that department?
Well, I had a couple of inspiring people, one of whom is my teacher at when I was about 12 years old. I met a wonderful teacher who's now still teaching at the Cleveland Institute of Music named Marshall Griffith, and he really helped me to see that you don't have to be boxed into any sort of one category in order to have your talent flourish, that you have to follow what comes naturally to you. Mm-hmm. And it was always a little bit of a struggle because I played piano, but I really always wrote songs with lyrics. But because I'm not really a singer, there was a little bit of a challenge. Like, well, how do I do this? If I'm the performer and I write songs with lyrics, but I'm not really a singer, what do I do?
Right. But you've collaborated with such people as Lady Antebellum, Johnny Mathis, Michael W. Smith, Martina McBride, Donny Osmond, of all people, and Olivia Newton-John. These are very prominent stars. And, all of them have different backgrounds and different styles. you seem to be able to work with anybody.
Well, that was a lot of my intention, was to break this barrier of the idea that because somebody's known as a country singer, that the song is inherently country. To me, it's about a great song sung by a great singer and not by somebody who has to sing in a certain genre. To me, it's just about, take somebody like Martina McBride. She's just a great singer who happens to sing country music as her chosen category, but she's not a country singer. She's a singer who's known for singing country music.
Well said. Very well said. On the horizon, are there any particular styles, maybe a new album coming out that you would like to talk about?
Well, so many things interest me and I've been thankful enough to really do so many of the styles that I had desired. Now I tend to be in a little bit of a different place as you would be 20 years into the career, where I'm interested in home growing and developing talent as well.
Oh.
And finding artists who I think have promise. So in the case of Lady Antebellum, for example, I worked with them before they had a record deal, before they, it was the first song that they ever performed that was a radio hit was with them. It was, I remember them talking to me about how excited they were to hear their song on the radio for the first time. I mean, this was at the very beginning. So developing that kind of talent and sort of pointing them in the right direction, or at least what I think for them is the right direction, is something that interests me. I also have a keen interest in more live performing or developing something that is a theatrical live performance.
Let me ask you about this. David Bowie, back in the early 70s, was kind of like that. Did you take any inspiration from those type of performers?
I am really impressed by any kind of strong performer who is unique. So, for example, David Bowie, it's unique to him, those choices that he made. And if you really think about anybody that is uber successful in the music business, they're iconic because they do something that is unique to them. It's not a cookie cutter. You always know it's them when you hear their voice. They do something in live performing that is unique to that experience, and that's, to me, that inspiration is not limited to just musicians. Sometimes it's comedians. Sometimes it's actors. Anybody that's able to carve out something that is specific to them and isn't like someone else.
You mentioned that you're developing some new artists. In your estimation, or in your eyes, in your talent, what are you looking for in a new artist? I mean, what makes a good artist? Is it just a good voice, or is it an overall aura that they have?
Well, this is interesting. It's a lot of people are talented. I'm not the greatest piano player ever in the world. I'm better than some. I'm not as good as others. So let's assume that in order to be successful in the music business, you have to be talented. So I don't necessarily look for a good voice to start with. I try to look at the whole thing, and a lot of what I particularly look for is the work ethic and the desire, that they have to do this, like I just said before. And if if I feel like I have to be the one to say, okay, now it's time for you to go here or go there, or they're not willing to kind of do a lot of the work themselves, then it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. These days, especially. So I look for strong work ethic. Of course, I look for the whole picture. You know, how will they look on stage? Are they unique, or are they just like everybody else? Do they have a story to tell? What is their story? And you know, combined with the look and the voice.
Sometimes a performer has what they say, a je ne sais quoi. They have this certain something that you can't just put your finger on and go, God, I don't know. They got it, though.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of think that, but at the same time, I remember how many times I went to record labels kind of telling my unique story. Well, you see, I'm a piano player, but I also write songs, and it's very mainstream, and and I think there's an audience for this. And they would say things, especially, I mean, things that were sometimes so cliche that I couldn't believe people were saying to me, like, you know, you just don't spark.
Wow.
Or, you know, I remember this one guy did at a record label, you don't spark, babe, you know.
Wow.
And you don't necessarily know what that is. Some of those things develop. You know, there's some artists who I don't think have that who are very successful. So, you know.
Very subjective.
Completely.
Interesting, yeah. I kind of feel the same way. Your latest project, let's talk about that for just a moment.
Well, the latest, brand new, is somewhat of an EP. It's called Freedom Rings, and it's an album of patriotic songs. This was inspired by the fact that I do a lot of music for the Olympic Games, and I also have I get asked quite often to do things like the national anthem. So, you know, for example, at the Indians game, sometimes I'll play the national anthem, and because this is such a quote unquote patriotic year focus because of the election, because of the Olympics, there seems to be a renewed patriotism in the country that comes from some of this. And so I thought, you know, there's not a lot of people who do an album of patriotic songs these days.
Yeah, Jim, I agree with it. What type of songs are on this CD?
Well, some of of course, the obvious choices like America the Beautiful and My Country 'Tis of Thee, The Star Spangled Banner, but also some songs of Americana, because really my writing and my playing has a very American influenced sound. For example, if you listen to even old like Stephen Foster or any turn of the century, any American composer of theater like Cole Porter or Irving Berlin, or if you listen to Rodgers and Hammerstein, or if you listen to even certain classical composers of the 20th century, my choices tend to be very Americana. So I did Shenandoah. I did a version of Home on the Range. Which,
nice. Yeah.
You would think, I mean, it's rare to find a pop version of Home on the Range. When Johnny Comes Marching Home, you know, things like that you can get away with on the piano as solos that you would never hear sung as a pop song.
Excellent. Jim Brickman, our special guest here on the Ray Carr Show. Jim, I wish you the very, very best. One day I'll be able to meet you in person. That's what I'm hoping for.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at Kane Park. It's such a beautiful, beautiful place, especially at night under the stars. And it's a place that I grew up in and seeing shows, and so it's an honor to be playing on their stage.
Jim, thank you for your time. You're a wonderful guest, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Ray.
Have a nice day.